me. I'm here with Mr. Daniel Susac. He's been a pain in my butt since he was about 13, 12. But yeah, go ahead and tell us a little bit about what your experience has been like in college. Everyone kind of has heard a little bit about your success. We've been posting about it, but tell us a little bit about like what was the biggest shortcomings going into college? Like, what'd you feel? Do you feel overpowered? Like what?
There's definitely a big jump from high school to college, and I learned that pretty quick in the fall. I think I hit like 170 in the fall.
Is that even your body weight?
No, it's not. I was really struggling, and the thing I learned was the best pitcher you face in high school, you see every day in college. So it took a little bit of time of adjustability, and then came back here in the winter, worked out a lot, and then worked on my swing a lot as well. Came back in spring, did a lot better, earned the starting role, and then had a pretty good year. We went all the way to Omaha, which was a huge goal of ours. Came up short, but we still had a really good season.
Yeah, it was fun to watch, especially when you guys were on ESPN. What do you think? What do you think really made you change from fall to spring? Like, what really helped in regards to, like, you made the adjustment, right? What are some of the adjustments that you think you made?
The two adjustments I made, one was mainly physical, getting in better shape so that way I could withstand the whole season. Catching, I think, 63 games is going to take a toll on your body, so if you're not ready for it, you'll deteriorate very quick. So I think the biggest thing I did was this winter, worked out every day, came in here. And then the other thing was working on my swing with my brother and all the coaches at Arizona, and especially getting down early and really seeing the ball. Fall, I felt like I was late and out of rhythm, so I really worked on getting all in time and in position better.
Nice. So all right, we're gonna backtrack a little bit. So obviously that was a good little experience of D1 college. What about in high school? Like, what did you see from freshman year to your senior year? Like, where did you feel like you started to get to the point where it's like, hey, I'm kind of good at this thing?
I feel like knowing freshman year, I feel like I knew I had the ability and the talent, but I was really kind of awkward, I would say, uncoordinated. Ran around like a bobblehead.
Still does.
Yeah. I was like 6'3", 170, which looked really awkward as a catcher. No home runs my freshman year. Sophomore year, started to hit a lot better, but still not as much power. It's probably 180 then. Junior year and senior years where I kind of started to bulk up a little bit, especially with the double days with football workouts and here. So they got up to 200 my junior year and 210 senior year. Started to see balls with more authority. I think I had 5 my junior year, and then senior year I cut short because of COVID.
You had what, 4 games?
Yeah, 3 games.
You guys were national champs.
Yeah, self-proclaimed national champs, 3-0. But I think the biggest change was physically growing into my body, being able to use that athleticism for a good purpose instead of kind of poking a single and trying to look uncoordinated running to first.
Yeah, so it's one of those things where, from my experience, every time I advanced a level, it was never necessarily like a skill thing, right? You can hit, you can throw, you can run, right? It was mainly like, how do I do that with authority, right? Is that something that you felt throughout your career?
Yeah, especially when you get to college, you start to really realize that you think coaches are just saying it your whole life, but it's true that everybody, when you get there, has the same amount of talent, or at least in the same ballpark, and everybody was the best player at their high school. So the thing that really separates there is hard work and kind of like dedication, whoever's going to be there the most, but not just being there the most, what you're doing with your time. I feel like that's what changed for me, especially here. When I was younger, I used to come here a lot, but it's because my dad forced me to. When it really changed is when I wanted to be here and started to put time in. That's when it really started to turn around.
I think your dad mentioned it when I think it was going into your junior year, you started putting on more weight. I think your dad was like, I don't know what you told him, but he's eating like 1,000 eggs a day.
Yeah.
So keep that going. And that was one of those things where we were doing the same stuff in here, but you took it to the next level, right? Like, what you do in here is good, but what you do outside of here with the extra hitting, the forearm stuff that you talked about, you do it in your garage, as well as like the eating habits, right? The more you eat, the bigger your body gets, the stronger you can get, the faster you can get, all the above. And that's something that I've been preaching on quite a bit. So you mentioned double days in regards to football and that. Did you ever feel like you were too fatigued to do something? Because I remember in the double days you would you'd have some sort of football practice, you'd have football weights, and you come in here after football and continue to work out. Did you ever feel like that was too much?
The only time I felt it was too much was at the beginning of the year, because I would start to get used to it again. But as soon as I got used to it and built up that tolerance, it was almost like my body knew when to give energy. Like I'd give energy at football, it'd shut down for a couple hours, and then it'd be right back ready to work out again. And it really got in a good pattern. Same with matching those sleeping patterns to where every day I felt like my body just knew when to put out the energy and when to shut down.
So your body adapts, right?
Yeah.
And so that's something that I like to preach. Everyone wants to look at these CrossFit athletes and they're like, oh, they must be on steroids because they work out 5-6 times a day. Well, they didn't start out working out 5-6 times a day. They started out once. They added a couple double days, and then they added consistent double days, and then they added a third workout every once in a while, and then they get progressed their body into being able to adapt. And I think it's the same thing that you're talking about.
Exactly. It's like even when I come home from, say, not lifting for a little bit, I think towards the end of the year, I think I need to do a better job of that.
You're talking about
in the college season this year.
Yeah.
Towards the end of the year, the games are starting to pile up towards the end, and especially in Omaha, we had limited access to a gym. So even when I came back here, it was like you start to feel that soreness again, but then probably a week after, it starts to build up again to where the soreness is less, and you can start coming in more and more and more. Versus when you first come in, you can't walk for 3 days.
You kind of get throttled.
Yeah, and then back to, say, a week later, you're still a little sore, but it's not overly painful.
It's not debilitating. It's not affecting anything you're doing outside of here. And I think that's something that I see on a regular basis in here, not even just necessarily with athletes, but definitely with general population people. They want to come in, they feel really motivated that first week, and they want to do more, they do more, and then they get beat up, or their CNS gets stressed and they get sick, and they end up missing a week. And I think it's one of those where if I can hold them back or try to hold them back from doing something like that, then the second week is better, and then the third week is kind of that motivation where they can push through some of those plateaus. And obviously from there, it's just where we can build to. And I think that's kind of what you're talking about. Like, you got to take it slow in the beginning, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Get your body used to it.
It's all about building it up.
Yeah. What's something, so in those first 2 weeks, obviously we're on this subject right now. In those first 2 weeks, what do you think, from me literally preaching to him constantly, are 2 things that you could probably do outside of here that that might help you get through some of that extra soreness stuff?
The 2 things you've always preached to me, which I find when I do them right to be true, when I do them wrong, it's not, is eat a lot, providing energy to your body, and then sleep a lot, and especially a regular sleeping pattern, not fluctuating a lot. Try to go to sleep anytime before 11, because I feel like past 11, it's just too late for me. I don't get enough, and I'm pretty grumpy in the mornings. So usually getting at least 8 hours. I like to get about 9, and then eating 4 to 5 times a day, because I feel when I go to bed too late, I wake up too late, and I don't eat enough.
Takes
I
a
miss
meal
one
out of
meal.
your, you miss a meal. Well, that's, that's one of those things where everyone's going to find their own pattern. You say 11, right? Because of what time I wake up, I say like anytime before 9. There's some kids that, like, I literally talk to them and their parents, and they're like, oh yeah, I'm going to bed before 1 o'clock. 1 o'clock? Well, I'm coming in at 2 in the afternoon. I'm like, it's not going to work. So 11 for Daniel seems to work. He gets his good rest, all the above. Some people, it might even be 7 o'clock.
Yeah.
Just depends on where you're at in your fitness career or general life. So in regards to eating, what was your number one go-to when you first started to decide to eat right? I mentioned eggs, right?
Yeah, it all pretty much started with a better breakfast. When I was younger, I would come in here, my dad would drop me off in the morning, I'd have to walk 2 miles back after. And the worst part was I wouldn't really eat in the morning before it, besides maybe a protein bar, and it just wasn't enough for me. So then I think where it changed is when I started to wake up a lot earlier, so I could cook my own meal. Bunch of eggs, bunch of bacon, some toast, and probably a protein shake. So that way I was already fully, basically, ready to work out instead of running on an empty stomach to where I lose energy. And it was perfect because as the workout went on, right towards the end I would start to get hungry again, and that's where that post-workout nutrition came in. And it was really perfect balance. And when I would come in before school at like 5:30 or 6 a.m. is when it really got tough, because I'd have to wake up at 5 to cook it. And at the time I didn't have my license. I didn't get my license until I was 18. but my mom would bring me a breakfast burrito and protein shake right after it. And it would be like I already had 2 meals before I even started school. And I think that's where I started to bulk. I think I got my heaviest ever during football. It was 218.
Yep.
To the point where I was like, am I getting fat? But I wasn't getting fat. I just thought I was because I'd never been that heavy before.
Yeah, it's probably a new weight you got to carry around for something you're not necessarily comfortable with, and a lot of people find that too, right? So for me, right now I'm at 205, and like I'm doing any sort of gymnastics or cardio work, and it just feels like I'm lugging around. But I'm not necessarily like like fat, but it's definitely one of those where it's not comfortable.
Yeah.
And it's one of the for some people, like for you being 218 at your height, probably would be something that you could easily get used to. But say at my height, getting 220 would be absurd.
Yeah, it'd be hard to get used to.
Be a bowling ball. All right. So what's the next step for you? Where do you think where do you want to go? What do you want to do, or what's in the future for at least next year?
Yeah, for this year, I would say to repeat the same season that our team had, get back to Omaha, but I feel like we came up short at Omaha, didn't play our best ball. Obviously lost a heartbreaker to Vanderbilt in the first game, but I want to go deeper in Omaha. Obviously I want to win it all, but the main thing is I think having more of a leader role this year, being an older guy now on the team, kind of adopting that role when I get there, and bringing that winning mentality to our whole team, and doing our best to do.
Bringing your experience, right?
Yeah.
So you've been to Omaha. You're gonna have a couple guys returning, a couple guys leaving,
Yep.
head coach leaving,
Yep.
new guy coming in. Do we know who that is yet?
Yeah, it's our new head coach is Chip Hale. He was the Tigers, I think, third base coach. He's a great guy. I've had a couple calls with him. Really excited to go out and meet him.
Nice. So yeah, bringing that experience, and then obviously it's one of those things where last year you saw, and you mentioned this a little bit. You said 63 games are gonna take a toll. If you could change anything, I'm assuming it's going to be some sort of eating habit, right? And then you said you don't have as much access to the gym, which sometimes you don't have control of. But in those eating, like, what would you say you could add? Could you add a meal, a protein shake, or is it just a matter of making more time for it?
Yeah, I think with we are lucky to have a house in college, and we have a barbecue as well. So I think the thing I need to do better is pre-make meals, put them in Tupperware. Get better at that instead of relying on, say, a post-game meal that is brought to us that may not be the most nutritious for me. And this part where I definitely need to get better is a better meal in between class and practice. Sometimes I don't get enough food in between those, and I run on practice maybe a little low on energy. So I think that's something I really need to do better. And even something to eat during practice, like a small thing to keep in your bag, say a PB&J, to get that extra nutrition for, say, the last hour of practice to make sure you're getting the most out of every day.
So this is going to lead me into my next question. How long have you been playing baseball?
I've been playing basically since I was 6.
So since he was 6, he's talked about high school adjustments. He's talked about a little bit of college adjustments, and even now he's talking about more adjustments for nutrition. It's one of those where he's constantly learning, figuring out what works for him. And a lot of guys don't necessarily pay attention to that, right? So it's like they'll go through their entire career kind of doing the same thing and wondering why, like, certain times they plateau or they don't get better, or they're not hitting for more power, or they're in a slump, or whatever it is. Well, you got to adapt your overall game plan, right? So for him, he noticed that 63 straight games really throttled his body, made him lose weight. How much weight did you lose?
I think I lost 9 pounds.
Lost about 9. That was throughout the season.
Yeah.
Lost about 9 pounds throughout the season. If you could hold on to that 9 pounds with a couple of small adjustments, I think that would probably make you feel a little bit better.
Yeah, I mean, I was always feeling good, kind of mentally and pretty physically. I think sometimes I would lose a little bit of energy just because I wouldn't maybe eat the right way during or before a game. I'd also get superstitious. Say I eat a certain meal before a game and I had a good game, I'd go eat it again.
Classic baseball.
Yeah, exactly. So I think the mental and physical part, I was fine. I think sometimes I would lose a little bit of energy, and I think that's something I really need to focus on more, because when I'm full energy is when I'm at my best. When I'm half energy is when I start to, not be my best or not contribute as much as I can.
And I think as much as this is quite biased by me, as part of that leadership role, do you think that would be something that you could preach to these younger guys coming in and be like, hey, you haven't played 63 straight games in a college setting. Here's something that I noticed. Try this.
Yeah, I think so. I think at the same time you kind of have to think about yourself when you're a freshman, fill in their shoes, that there's a lot of learning to do.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like, you can't really be stern about it. It's kind of a work in progress. And I learned that. I had some great leaders as well on our team. And they did a great job with me of taking it one step at a time. And I think I really learned from them, and I can pass it on to the next generation too.
So yeah, that's that leadership thing. You always learn from the guy ahead of you. You take what works for you, you preach to the next guy, and it'll be a pretty good cycle.
Yeah.
Anything to add to the guys coming into MLP at all?
Yeah, I think it's a great place. I was one of the first clients in here. I think I came in here my 8th grade going into freshman year. Super uncoordinated.
Didn't want to be here.
Did not want to be here.
Got yelled at a lot.
The worst part was every workout finished with a 2-mile walk home because I didn't have a car. My parents were working. And it was like the whole workout, I was just in the back of my head, I was like, I'm going to have to walk 2 miles home after this. And I already couldn't walk because I was a skinny little kid that was just ruining his legs, squatting. And I had to walk all the way home. I was the only one in sight, so Chris was just yelling at me. He was always on me. But I think once I started to put effort in and really change it around is when you as well kind of took back a little bit, kind of let me do my own thing while still being on me and expecting the most out of me. But it changed from, say, a daycare to me working with you and getting better as myself. And I think it's great for any young baseball player, and understanding that you can train baseball as much as you want, but if you don't lift with it, you're not really going to improve much. You'll improve a little bit, obviously, because you have to practice baseball and hone those skills, but without training incorporated with it, you really won't enhance them as much as you possibly can.
Yeah, and that's a big thing that I like to preach to these guys too. Is even in season, try to at least lift 3 times a week. Did I make adjustments to your training regimen? Because you would come in the morning before baseball, right?
Yeah. It was definitely different, but still got the most out of me. It wasn't like I came in here and stretched for an hour and called to work. I'd still lift weights, but it wouldn't be something where I would be sore for the game. It'd almost be something that was as a warm-up for the game to get my muscles activated. And it was almost perfect because I'd go to school and my body would rest for a little bit, and then as the game would start, when I'd warm up again, they would reactivate it again and feel like they were almost fully pumped, ready for a game.
Yeah, that's the hard part, because a lot of guys, like you mentioned, it's like, okay, well, I got to wake up at 4:30, I got to wake up at 5 to be able to get there, to be able to get the workout in and head to class. But in the same sense, you're talking about wanting to go to D1 college, who's going to require that. You're talking about wanting to make it to the pros, which is a whole nother level. So it's going to require doing the things that nobody else does.
Yeah.
And it sucks. Trust me.
My first lift in college was at 6, and I woke up at 5:30. I woke up late from my alarm, and I was just scared to life because I only got there 20 minutes early. And it was like, if I wasn't early, I was late. And that's just the whole mentality I've had since, growing up. My dad always told me, and all of our coaches told us, like, if you were on time, you were late. If you were early, you were on time. If you were late, you didn't want to know what happened. So I was scared, and I was 20 minutes early. And I was in the middle of the pack, people are showing up. So, I mean, it's different when you get to D1 baseball, where everybody's going to want to get early. Everybody's going to want to outwork you. It's a lot to do with what you do while you're there, but a lot to do while you're gone as well, and who's going to be the better players.
Yeah, and that's one of those things where we talked about the sleeping habits, right? If you can develop the habit, and that's one of those things, waking up early, getting to the gym early, getting your work done, and then going and doing the rest of your day. If you can develop that habit, say junior year, sophomore year in high school, it's going to be a lot easier after 3 years, 2 years of consistently doing it, to do it in a setting which causes more stress. I mean, this is a guy that got heavily recruited, and he should be, one of those guys that probably walks in and thinks he's the stuff, but now he's like, okay, this is high stress. If I don't do it right, it's wrong.
Yeah, exactly. And it was definitely helpful when I showed up to college, because I worked out here a lot at 5 or 5:30. So when it was 6, it was almost like it's an extra 30 minutes to an hour. And it wasn't like something that was foreign to me or I'd never done before. It was almost as like my body was acting into that mode again, where I'm waking up early and going to lift and going to school and then baseball. So instead of it being a brand new thing to me, it was almost a thing I was doing again and getting back into it.
Just a little bit more comfortable. It's like riding a bike. You haven't done it in a couple of years. You get on it, you get used to it again.
Yeah.
Versus learning it firsthand while you're going down a hill. It's going to be really hard. it's pretty cool to hear all that kind of stuff coming from a D1 guy that I've been able to work with. There's been a couple that have been through here, Lucas Gaines, Scott Randall, all those guys. And I think a lot of those guys have had similar experiences. Brennan Rozelle, like they kind of have been used to those early morning workouts, and then they go into college and they end up being fairly successful at doing the same thing. And it's kind of like you mentioned, it's just a habit. It feels normal.
Exactly, just creatures of habit and creating good habits instead of bad ones is the main thing.
Yeah.